In this movie, we're going to continue to talk about references. We've seen what references are, and we've seen how to pass them in as arguments to a function. In this movie, I want to take a look at how we can return references as return values out of a function. To start with, I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to use my references args file, and I'll just do a save as on that. And we'll call this references returns as function. We'll just say return values. Now I'll go ahead and get rid of all of the function I had there, and I'll write it in a new function. And it's going to be function ref return, and I'm not going to pass in any arguments to it, but instead I'm going to have a global value that I'll pull in, global A, and I'll use A and just do a simple transformation on it so we can see that it's changed. And last of all, return that value. And then I'll go ahead and set A equal to 10. And if I have B equal to ref return, right, then that should take whatever return value came back from the reference return, right, and it should put it into B. So in order to test this out, let's echo those out so we can see them. And I'm just going to do a real simple echo on those, and let's see what they're equal to. So I'll save that. We'll come back to the web browser, and we'll just do returns.php. Okay, so they're both equal to 20. It starts out A is equal to 10. Then we run this function, which brings in A as a global, changes its value. It's a global, so we're affecting that global value of A, and then it returns it to B, so B is also equal to 20. Fair enough. But now notice what happens if we say, well, B is equal to 30. Let's take that same line, and let's test that out. Now, B equals 30 and A equals 20, right? We're not using any kinds of references. So B is just a separate variable, and when we change its value, it doesn't affect A, right? Because we're not using any references. Now, we talked about reference assignment before, and we learned how to simply use the ampersand after an equals sign for a reference value. And that we used it before, we would say that B references A. Let's save this, and let's just try it here and see what happens. Nothing. Nothing changed. It gave us the same value back, right? Because it's returning a value to us. Now, it says return A here, but it's not returning the actual variable A. It's not returning a reference to A. It's returning the value, the same way as when we passed in arguments. And we said that we were going to have the first argument be passed in be A. Without that reference assignment, we were passing in the value of A, which was 10. So in this case, what we're returning is the value here, not A. Just be clear on that. It's returning the value. The number 20 is being returned, and that is being set up as a reference. B is referencing 20, which really is kind of meaningless for it to reference 20, right? It's equal to 20. It's the same thing. So in order for this to return a reference, we need to put another ampersand here at the beginning of the function name. So that's where it's going to go. It's going to let us know that we're returning it. It doesn't go down here. It goes up at the beginning of the function name, and it says return a reference value. Whatever return value comes out of here will be a reference. That means that what's being returned out of here is a reference. So that's returning, actually A is being returned. But if we don't have this one, then B is still just being set to the value of A, right? So we need both of them. It's important to have both so that the reference is being sent out of the function as a reference, and it's being set to B as a reference. You have to have that handshake between the two. Otherwise, it won't work. So now let's try it. And let's reload it. And we see that now, in the second line, A and B are both equal to 30. Because when I set B equal to 30 here, it also changes A at the same time because they're a reference. And we know how references work. We've seen that. So once again, if you need to play with it a little bit, try taking out the ampersand here and see what you get. And try taking out the ampersand here and see what you get. And you'll see that it doesn't work in either case. It's because we're passing out a reference, and then we're setting B to that reference. There's two steps to that process. So make sure you're clear on that. Before we move on, I just want to give you another example. I'm just going to skip down here, and I'll put another function, which I've called increment. And this one, instead of using a global variable, is going to use static variable, which is going to start out by initializing to 0, and then it will increment it by 1 and return that value. It makes sense. It's called increment. But it's going to return a reference to that static variable. So if we catch that value of increment in A, then the variable will increment. A will now be a reference to that increment. So therefore, if we call it a second time, just on its own, like that, what will the value of a be? A is still pointing to this static variable. When we call the function again, even though it's not doing any assignment, it increments that static variable. So a still points to it. Even more interesting is that we can increment it this way, because a points to the same thing as increment. So it's once again incrementing that static variable. So either one works. We'll do the same thing one more time. Increment. And then last of all, just so we can prove to ourselves that this has been working, let's do an increment. So last of all, just so we can prove to ourselves that this has been working, let's echo out the value just so we can see what it is. So I'll save this and let's go back and let's reload it, and you'll see that a is equal to 4. The first time it increments it, then it increments it again, and then again, 4 times. The static variable in there is just getting incremented, and we can do it either way because we've made a reference to a value inside this function. These reference techniques that we've been learning will become more useful later when we start working with object-oriented programming and with databases. We'll talk more about references after we talk about objects. Let's begin our discussion of object-oriented programming in the next chapter.